So I remember this one time, my sister and I, it was night time, we were about to sleep, and then she starts crying. I was just perpetually confused. I used to feel very left out. Nobody realized that I was a child too. I used to always resent the idea of going back home every day. The onus is on the parents. They should be the ones getting the advice and working on it. I don't think they're completely healed individuals.
This is the first time that I'm telling this story.
Hello there, and welcome to Whips and Chains.
An individual can be sold innumerable times.
What are the whips that we flog ourselves with often?
I discovered cancer, I had breast cancer.
And what are the chains that bind us down?
फिर मैंने YouTube पे देखा कि फीमेल फिटिसाइड होता कैसे
Is something I want to explore in my show.
They're orphans.
It's okay. It's okay.
गर्दन निकलती है बाकी हिस्सा ऐसे ऐसे करके निकलता है यार इतना बड़ा पाप होता अपने गांव में
It's horrific.
Somebody passed me by and hit my bum.
He did have a personality disorder.
कई बार मैं सो ही नहीं सका
All the traffickers that I have seen, they are common people like you and me.
She said, Kanda tu dein, vata putar tu.
If you talk about human trafficking, it's a billion-dollar business.
There was a lot of violence, a lot of aggression.
बड़े बड़े पुल बना दोगे उनसे ह्यूमैनिटी तो नहीं बनने वाली
And welcome to Whips and Chains. Hello there, and welcome to Whips and Chains, the safe space where we can use our unfiltered voices and our unmasked faces to talk about everything that society asks us to shush. What are the whips that we flog ourselves with often? And what are the chains that bind us down? Is something I want to explore in my show. For today's show, I have with me someone very special who I have known all her life, right from before she was born. And we have had several intimate conversations together. Today's topic is something very close to my heart because, like her, I'm also a child of divorce, and my evolution has been largely impacted by how I dealt with my parents' divorce. So, welcome, Shreya.
Hi.
It's really nice to have you today, and I couldn't think of anyone better to start this because it goes right back to, where I started from. And in fact, I was just thinking that I was also in your space when I was 16. I appeared in a Doordarshan documentary on this topic. So it's really nice to be able to share with you something that goes right back so many years. So getting to the topic, divorce is not something easy on anybody in the family, and but we always talk about it in the context of how it affects the wife and how it affects the husband. But often we ignore how it really impacts the children because they are the real main sufferers, right? So tell me, in your case, as the elder child, you are the elder of two sisters, when was your first impression of all is not well? How old were you? How did you think and feel and realize? Tell me that.
I think the earliest memory I have is probably when I was about 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, and I used to stay with my mom at that time, and around that time she shifted us to my dad's. So I remember a lot of conflict around that time. I also remember going to my friends' homes and seeing everything very normal, so to say, and meeting my cousins and seeing how their parents behave with each other and how they are treated and how they're cared for and looked after, and the lack of that in my household. So I think that would be my earliest memory.
And then you had to deal with this in the context of your sibling also, because since she was younger to you by 2 years, so you possibly also felt you had to filter this for her, or did she receive it on her own, or did you first have some conversation around it? What was that like?
So she has her own experience and everything. And it's been quite different from mine, but she's 2 years younger to me, and even when I was 6 and she must be 4, then I still had to be that mother figure for her at that age, and having to explain to her where our mother is when she dropped us off and why isn't she back or what is exactly happening, because we didn't realize what a divorce is. We didn't understand what's happening. All we knew was that we were being shifted from one home to another. And
Was there any reason given to you that why you were being shifted and why now you were with Papa or now you were with Mom? And
there was no reason given to us. We didn't talk about it. It was just like we were picked up from one place that we called our home, our safe space, and we were put into another.
And you did not find that home as safe as the original home, is that it? Was that alien in any way?
It was alien because as kids, you have a safe space, like wherever you grow up, that's your safe space. And if suddenly you're sort of uprooted
Yeah.
and you're taken someplace else without any explanation, without any sort of promises of when we'll be back, it does feel very scary. I remember crying every day, wanting to go back. Love and my sister and I were made promises to when we were told that our mother would be back to get us, but that would not happen, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so that was really tough.
Yeah. And so which of your parents first spoke to you about the divorce or the separation or the idea that, you know, your parents will not be together anymore or there is a problem? Which of them and when?
I don't think we were ever given a talk about this. We sort of just figured it out by ourselves. We just knew that there was something wrong, and I think I realized that this was my parents were divorced when in school one of my friends came up to me and she told me that her parents have told her that you cannot be friends with somebody whose parents are divorced. So that's the first time I found out that there's something wrong.
Okay. So you actually heard from someone else how
Yes.
her parents received your situation.
Yes. And
Oh,
even,
that is terrible.
yeah, and even amongst relatives, for example, they would just ask me questions like, oh, where's your mother? Or why isn't she back? And they would talk about it, and we just sort of
Yeah.
hear from them, and we
Silent spectators.
piece things
yeah.
together. That's
Yeah.
how we really understood our situation.
Yeah, this is actually a deeply troublesome area because I also felt in my childhood that either people think that the children are really dumb and they are not, sensitive to everything that is being said and all the narratives around the parents, and also the extended family seems to talk about, oh, is it so and so's fault or so and so's fault, and suddenly you are receiving information about something you don't understand being the fault of someone, because you don't look at it like that, right? You look at it as just your suffering. And now you hear these external narratives about was he to blame or she to blame. I understand. So is there a story that you built up to cope with this situation in school or with friends? Or, I mean, what did you tell new people that you met about your parents, or what was
So,
that?
um, for as far as I can remember, my parents have been separated. I never really had them all together growing up. I never really had a full, proper family. So it was very normal to me, and that was my normal.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't hesitate telling my friends or anybody else who asked me where my mother is or where my father is. I would just tell them that my parents are divorced, and it didn't feel like a big deal to me. But it's when they started reacting in certain ways and started telling me that, oh, and started pitying me,
Yeah.
is when I
Yeah.
realized that, okay, divorce is not something
Very common.
very
Yeah,
common,
very
or
common.
not something that people
Take kindly.
take kindly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I remember that when I was a child, like you said, the experience of watching other parents and other families was extremely alien. I mean, I remember we've never had a family meal together because my parents were always fighting. So it was always, people eating in separate rooms and at separate times and all of that. So I used to find it extremely strange when I would go to my friends' houses and everyone was eating together, or the father and the mother shared a joke, or they did something, nice for each other, and I used to look as if these people must be really so crazy because this just doesn't happen. So did you feel a sense of being left out at all when you watched other families bonding?
I used to feel very left out. I used to cry. I wouldn't hide my tears. I just start crying whenever I felt that way. And I'd go to my relatives' houses, I'd go to my friends' houses, and they'd just be such a loving, caring family. And I'd feel like, what went wrong what went wrong with me? What's so different about me? Why is it happening to me? And I couldn't really understand because I used to hear different reasons from everybody about why the divorce happened or why our family is the way it is. But
So, you never asked your parents about it ever directly, or was there a time when you directly asked them that, tell me about this because I don't understand?
I think I didn't have to ask my mother about what happened because since I was 6, she had been telling me her side of the story, and where she was sort of the victim and everybody was just villainizing her and everybody else was at fault. And because I was a kid and as a girl, I was attached to my mother the most. Also, I lived with her as a child before she shifted us. So I used to blame my father and my grandmother a lot for the divorce. And they never really explained to me as to why the divorce happened or who's at fault. They didn't think it was important, or maybe they thought that I was too young to understand, but I was already getting a
All
lot of
the
information from one side. So it would have been nicer for them to sort of explain it to me. But also, whatever I heard from my grandmother, which was in abundance, was very biased as well. So it was like I was hearing two conflicting
sides.
yeah, and that left me confused because I'm a child. First of all, I don't need to know what is happening because, and also whatever you tell me, I'm gonna take that as the gospel truth.
Yeah.
So I was just perpetually confused.
Yeah. So as your parents naturally evolved, in their independent lives, and both of them started seeing, different people and having different romantic partners, how was that experience for you?
So I think because I was away from my mother a lot, and I'd heard a lot of stories about her and stuff that just villainized her a lot. I was always really uncomfortable with her being with anybody else or seeing anybody else. And I also had this I had this internalized misogyny even at that age, because I heard from my grandmother a lot of things that, oh, your mother is like this, like that, she does this. And so I always hated the idea of her being with anybody else, because I would think that, oh, so she's left me, she's left us, and she's out there just living her life, and this is not how mothers are supposed to be, because I was told that mothers are supposed to be there for you, and they're supposed to care for you and love you, and not just
Self-sacrificing.
They're supposed to be self-sacrificing. So if I used to watch any movies or TVs where the mother had left the child for whatever reason, I would be like, oh, she's such a terrible woman, she's such a terrible mother, and I just project my stuff, my feelings onto. And I think I did that with my mother for way too long, until I realized that this is not the case.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, the point that you brought up about the internalized misogyny was there with me too. Because again, I saw my parents with different people. And somehow I think we do, as a society, have a different standard for men and a different standard for women. Because if a man goes out with other women, that's okay, because I don't know what legitimizes that. And it is a threat, yes, but it's not as much of a threat. But to see your mother with another man is deeply, deeply disturbing. And you really have to grow into that space to accept that, yes, she has as much of a right, to a personal life as the father. So yeah, I get that. So how did all of this, evolution of your parents as independent beings, and your dealings with, the extended family and your friends and all of that, impact your relationship with your sister? How did that grow as a result?
I think it made us closer. So I remember this one time, we were very young, and my sister and I, it was nighttime, we were about to sleep, and then she starts crying. So I had to always be the strong one. I had to always be the one, like, the sort of mother figure for my sister, because I was the eldest and we were both going through the same thing, but just because I was elder, I had to be there for her. So I had to suppress my emotions. I couldn't cry because I knew that if I cried, my sister would cry. And then if she cried, the entire situation would just go out of hand. And we couldn't really go and vent to anybody about however we were feeling. So I remember this one time we were about to sleep and my sister starts missing mom and she's crying. And then I randomly made up this lie. I was just like, so there is a camera in our room and mom is seeing us. And if she sees you cry, she's going to feel sad and she's going to cry too. Do you want her to feel sad? That's how I consoled her. Like, these are the things that I used to do to console my sister. And also the way we were treated was very, like, different. She was younger. She was more soft-spoken at home than I was. So she was treated as she was treated differently from me. I was the one who was hearing everybody's stories about what is happening in the family or why the divorce has happened. So I used to speak out a lot. I used to get angry, which is why I was just treated as that rebellious kid who didn't listen to anybody, who shouted or screamed a lot, who didn't do things the way they're supposed to be done. But nobody realized that I was a child too. And this was just my way of dealing with things. And nobody came up to me and asked me how I'm dealing with it. I used to go to a counselor in school to talk to her. And that used to be my safe space. Like, I used to look forward to going to my school counselor every day. I used to hate going to school as well, because if suddenly my friends didn't want anything to do with me, and then because of everything that was happening at home, I was very quiet, I was a very shy kid. And when my teachers used to tell that to my grandmother, she used to say a lot of things, and she used to go up to our teachers and say that, oh, you have to take care of them because they're orphans, and which felt really weird to me because both my parents were there. They were just not around all the time.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You have had a very, very dominant grandmother, right? So she
Yeah.
has been the very dominant presence in your lives, and she kind of took hold of your lives in your childhood and brought you up while, you know, your mother was living separately and your father was busy with work. And usually in these situations, the children do sort of gravitate towards one other person in the family who kind of is their, you know, mainstay. For me, it was my grandmother who I adored, who kept me sane, but who I didn't meet more than 1 month a year. And in your case, of course, you lived with your grandmother, but you did not end up having a very happy relationship with her.
Yeah.
So what was all that about? What was that like? You know, dealing with a grandmother as a sort of third parent and a routine keeper.
Well, first of all, my childhood was already quite different from that of my friends because my parents didn't live together. And then, secondly, I was being brought up by my grandmother, who's from a different generation. So she has her own way of dealing with things and with children or whatever. Didn't really work for us for obvious reasons. And I would already feel alienated, but that made me feel more of an outcast. I was embarrassed to talk about my situation. Nobody could really understand why my grandmother was there at all my PTMs, for example, or for any school meet or anything like that. She was the one handling it. And she didn't understand a lot of things. For her, academics, it was like the main priority. And so because of that, we were just cooped up in the house 7 days a week. And so the only person I really had by my side was my sister, who was going through pretty much the same thing. But also because she was younger and she was sort of given the preferential treatment at that time, she couldn't really get everything that I was going through. And because she was a kid, she didn't know how to deal with everything that's going on. She used to just let it go. Like, she wouldn't understand what I'm going through, and she would just be okay with receiving that treatment, which is fair enough. I mean, you can't expect a child to understand that. I've just sort of understood because I didn't really have a choice. I was there looking out for my sister, but there was nobody looking out for me. And I didn't have a strong or close relationship with my father. Even though I was living with him and my grandmother, I didn't have a very strong bond with him until much later, I think in middle school. Till middle school, it was my grandmother who was the
The main
primary
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she was also largely influenced by these very superficial ideas of who looks more like someone in her family and who looks more like, you know, someone from the other family, and that kind of narrative also impacted, you know, your evolution a lot, I think.
Yes.
And how did your parents um, deal with this? I mean, because as you grew up, you were 10, you were 12. So I'm sure you had these conversations with your parents that, this kind of thing is not okay, or this is making me unhappy. How did that work out for you?
So I think my sister got most of that because she has gone on my mom's side of the family. So she's got those features, and she had a lot of insecurities because of it growing up, because my grandmother always used to point it out, and she used to,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But for me, on the other hand, I was a healthier kid. I was a chubbier kid growing
yeah,
up.
yeah,
So I used to get a lot of
yeah. The fat shaming.
the fat shaming. It was
Yeah,
a lot. I remember I was 8 years old, and it was like just about, like, we were just about to have dinner, and she comes up to me, and in front of my cousins and everybody else, she's just like, "Oh, look at her arm and look at my arm, like the difference." Like, and I was 8, and because of that, hearing that growing up on a daily basis, it really messed with me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how has this this situation impacted your parents individually? Do you feel that one of them has moved on more than the other? How has that kind of worked out? And why, now that you're an adult, more importantly, how has that worked out, and why do you think that is? Because I know you've studied psychology, you're well read, you live abroad now. So, in your adult understanding of the issue, how do you see that playing out on both of them as individuals?
I think I'll start with my father, because I've lived with him, so I've observed him more closely. He he has also been through a lot, and he also didn't have the best sort of role model when it came, like, growing up, when it came to like he was not very close to his parents either, but he tried his best to give us what he didn't receive, like in terms of love and affection, after a while when we
Yeah.
got closer. And he just had one vision. He just wanted to move ahead with his life. He knew that he didn't think that divorce was the end of
His life.
his life. And I think when we shifted in with him, I think the responsibility also sort of built up, and then he knew that he had to really do something about it. And then he started putting all of that energy and that effort into creating his business. That's where all of his energy went.
Yeah.
And I think that also sort of helped him get over everything. And also, he's not the kind of person who would like to discuss a lot about his feelings. He keeps it all to himself. So, but he definitely, I'd say that he's the one who's moved on, really, because
He's in a steady relationship.
he's in a steady relationship now, and he's very happy with everything that he's achieved, and with us, and everything's great. For my mother, I I think she's moved on, but she still holds on to a lot of anger and resentment. She has all of that really built up inside, whereas my dad just lets it go. He focuses, because also he focused a lot on his work and everything, which was easier for him because he had the family support, and at the end of the day, he's a man, so of course things were a little easier for him than for my mother.
So your mother you think has not been able to focus as much on her work as your dad has? Is that what you're saying? Is that contributing in any way to the
I
repository of
think if
anger?
my mother was stable or in a stable, if she was just stable in life right now, I think that would have definitely helped her a lot. But because things have just been changing constantly for her, and there are just a lot of things that she still hasn't moved on from, which is why I think
Yeah.
hasn't been able to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think whether it's in India or abroad, I think women invest so much emotionally
Yeah.
in the family ecosystem and all of that, that breaking that and moving away, either putting that on the back burner or whatever, is a huge task for many people.
Yeah,
And
I think
I think
over the years, I really tried to get her to focus on herself and her growth because nothing else mattered and nobody was coming out, like just looking out for her. And she had to be there for herself. But I feel like she also has that sort of internalized guilt and that misogyny somewhere deep inside
we all
her,
do to
which we
different
all do,
degrees, yeah,
yes.
to different degrees, yeah.
So because of that, I feel like over the years she tried getting back into the folds of the family. It didn't work
Yes.
out. She always had these expectations that someday things would work out, but that didn't happen. Like one person moved on and
Yeah,
she was just left behind.
yeah, yeah. What is it that you would like to say to people who are going through divorce or contemplating divorce or who have divorced and have kids whose experiences they are not really considering? Because you know what happens in today's atmosphere, I find that parents think, okay, if child is suffering, then the counselor will take care of it, or some therapist will take care of it, or maybe a grandparent will take care of it. Whereas the real wounding for the child is happening because of the parent. No counselor or grandparent or anyone else externally can really take away that wound except for the parent themselves. Right? So, what is it that you would want parents to know that children are feeling? Um, you know?
I want parents to know that children, they're like sponges. You don't realize, but they might not understand everything that's going on or what is being talked about, but they absorb everything. They hear everything and they absorb everything, and that sort of also becomes a part of the subconscious. Everything that I've heard and seen till date, I feel like it's a part of my personality now, and subconsciously I end up doing certain things that I saw my mom doing, or the way she talks, or my dad what he used to do, and certain things. I just feel that you should be more careful around kids. Be more mindful of what you're saying. You need to tell them that it's not their fault. First of all, whatever is happening around them, it's
Yeah.
not their fault, and that they'll be protected, they'll be loved, and they'll be safe no matter what happens. Whoever they go to, whatever happens, they will be protected because children, they just want to feel safe wherever you keep them.
Yeah.
As long as they feel safe,
It's fine.
it's all good.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and
true.
I didn't have that at all. I used to just I used to just hope that things will get better one day because I didn't know what exactly is happening. There was no conversation that took place. So I just keep dreaming, I'd keep hoping, wondering.
Was there any incident or any time where you felt that your physical safety was compromised because of this position?
Multiple times. I think there have been a couple of times that at home, obviously, we've been alone. also the thing about growing up with my grandmother was that she didn't take a lot of things seriously. Like, you should not leave children at
Alone.
home alone with just
Domestics.
domestic help, or you should not. For example, there was some painting going on at our house, and we were just home alone with all of these men in the house, and it was very scary. I didn't know what is good or what is bad, but I do remember feeling that there's something off, that there's something going on, there's something weird happening. And I remember
There was a problem.
there was a problem, and thankfully I had this one of my domestic help. She was at home, and I just ran to her, and I just stayed there, didn't move away from her, like just stayed in her sight, and that felt safe to me.
And how old were you?
I must have been 9, I guess.
And your sister was okay? Was she spared this, or she always had you?
She always had me. And I remember also my grandmom hiring a lot of male help when we were kids. I remember changing one day, and she just brought him into the room, and I was just confused. I was like, what are you doing? Like, why? And it didn't seem like it was a problem. She thought it was completely normal, it was completely okay.
Yeah.
And I used to tell my mother everything, but she couldn't do much. First of all, she wasn't taken very seriously in our house. So even if I did go to her, she was the only person I could rant to or vent to.
Yeah.
But nobody took her seriously. Nobody listened to her. So it felt like talking to
a wall.
A wall, because
I think the main reason would have been the financial aspect, right? Because she wasn't paying for you.
yes.
So therefore, she had no locus standi to say anything. And that was her vulnerability, which is sadly quite a reality for so many women in this scenario. But what is it that you would say to children, for example, whose parents are going through divorce and separation, and where I think you largely feel the silences between them, and you feel the negativity between them. So how would you tell the children to receive that or prepare themselves for that?
Honestly, I don't think I would want to, or I could give any advice to the children who are going through this, because the onus is on the parents. They should be the ones getting the advice and working on it. Because it doesn't matter how much or whatever you tell the children that, oh, it'll all be over one day, or it's not about you, you're safe, this is just how the situations are. They'll always feel unsafe or threatened, or they'll always be vulnerable, and you can't do anything about it. I remember getting a lot of advice from my aunts and my uncles about how I should deal with my situation, and none of that seemed to work, because those were just words to me, because at the end of the day, I was the one going back home and I had to deal with everything. So none of that helped. It just probably made me a better listener. That's about it.
Yeah. I remember that from my memory of you, I remember at one stage I strongly advocated that both of you should be in the hostel.
Yeah.
I did that because that is what really saved me. And I remember you were quite, I think, averse to it, and as was your family.
I don't know why my family said no for it or whatever, but the reason I didn't want to go was because of the picture my grandmother had painted of the boarding school, and she used to use it as a punishment that, oh, if you don't do this, I'll send you there. This is what happens there. They don't let you out. She used to create these very extreme scenarios, and I used to get scared because of that. And
Yeah.
also, I don't think anybody around me had ever gone to a boarding school, so I didn't even know who to talk to get the actual picture of it. And also, I feel like we had been moved around so much, and I already at that time had a sense of abandonment. I already had those
Yeah.
abandonment issues.
Yeah.
It just felt like being thrown away yet again. And
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I was very scared of that. And I also remember her telling me that we won't come and get you. And that reminded me of the promises that my mother made that, okay, I'm going to drop you off at your grandmom's, and then I'll come back to see you on the weekend. And then the weekend would come in, and I'd be ready, I'd be packed, I'd comb my hair, braid it, just ready for her to come see me. And then she'd call me and say that I can't make it. And this used to keep happening.
Yeah.
So I was just too afraid to get out of the house or to do anything.
Yeah. So, how has this situation of divorce and unhappy marriages impacted your ideas about love, about relationships? How has that worked?
Well, first of all, I think everything that I saw growing up and everything that I went through, it really impacted my confidence. Like, I had zero confidence, and I'm still trying to build up to it because I can't do anything about it now. Whatever has happened, and I'm the only person who can work on it now, and I have nobody else to blame. And if I want to succeed in life, I have to pick up all the pieces and,
Yeah.
get them all together. So, and also because I feel like we lived with our dad, and our dad never spoke about love or marriage or anything like that. And that's also because of his own experiences. They weren't too great, so he didn't want to talk about it. My grandmother, of course, never talked
Yeah.
about it. And because also at school we were sort of just like the odd ones out, we didn't have the same middle school and high school experiences as other kids had. And I was also always very shy growing up. So when I first got out of school is when, and I sort of had a glow up, if you can call it that. And because I had no idea of what is right, what is wrong, what and how love is supposed to be like. I feel like I made a lot of
Bad
dumb
choices.
decisions, a lot of bad choices. But I think sometimes they were very unsafe choices. But I think I just learned from it. And I couldn't really go up to anybody and tell them about what I'd done or where I was. I couldn't really tell anybody anything. I couldn't trust anybody. So I had to just make my own mistakes, learn from them, and then try not to make the same mistakes again, and then teach that to my sister so that she doesn't do the same things that I did. So I made a lot of bad choices, but after a certain point, when I realized that this is not the kind of life I want, even though I haven't seen a happy family growing up, some people might go the other way and they might get self-destructive, or they might end up getting into the same patterns as their family did. For me, I went the other direction. I didn't want the kind of life that my parents had or that family. And I knew that I had to work on myself. I had to do a lot of inner work, heal my inner child because it was so wounded. And I had to do a lot of that to get to the place that I am today emotionally. And I feel like now I feel a little more settled, and the choices that I make when it comes to friendships or romance or whatever, there's so much, they come from a more informed, more healed place.
So, what is it that you would look for in a man today? Like, what are the qualities that are absolutely yes and what are absolutely no?
I would definitely want my man to be more. I would want him to be there for me. I would want him to just be like a very caring person, a very loving person, very somebody who's very in touch with their emotions because
Visibly.
So yeah, because I didn't have that, I didn't see that growing up, and I really needed that, and I'm a very emotional person, so I need somebody like that. But at the same time, I'm also very scared of somebody like that in my life because since I haven't seen that growing up, my normal was the distant, the cold ones, that adrenaline rush that I used to get from.
Yeah.
So that's normal for me. So whenever anybody loving and caring and giving has come into my life, I've just pushed them away because that was too much for me. That was overwhelming, and I didn't know how to deal with that. But I I feel like I've worked a lot on that, so now I'm ready to accept that love and that care. I want somebody to be very much in touch with their emotions, and I also want them to. I want somebody who stands up for me. Like, I know
Yeah.
I'm confident enough now to stand up for myself, but I still have those moments where I feel like I feel very weak and I need somebody. I don't need anybody, but I would like to have somebody stand up for me, to be there for me, because I don't have that.
And in what ways, as a model of womanhood, are you different from your mum as a result?
I think I don't trust a lot of people very easily. And I remember always getting mad at my mom, and I still do. I get very mad at my mother when she just conforms very easily and she just wants, oh, for the peace of the family, for the peace of everything, I'm just going to shut down, or I won't speak up, or I won't do this, that. I feel like I'm the complete opposite. And since I was a kid, I've been like that. If I feel there's something wrong, I'll speak up about it. And it's not taken too well, even in my own family. So I know in the outside world it's even worse. But so I feel like in that way I'm completely different. But one thing I definitely have to say, my mother's a very strong woman. The things that she's seen, the things that she's been through, I don't think I'm strong enough. I don't think I'm confident enough. And I don't think I believe in myself that much. But I feel like I'm building up to all of that, and it's a work in progress. And in a lot of ways, I still look up to her because despite my personal relation with her, I think as a woman, she is very headstrong and she's definitely somebody to look up to.
That's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, today you are in a space where you are closer to your dad, right? I mean,
Yes.
in a sense, you've lived with him, you've grown up for a few years of your adult life, and you have accepted the fact that he's moved on and he's in a stable relationship. In fact, you have a great relationship with, his partner. So, does that sort of their relationship, does that give you a model of what ideally, a man-woman relationship should be in a
Not
couple?
really, because their
Okay.
relationship isn't perfect either. I feel like both my parents haven't healed enough. I feel like they've just moved on. They've just pushed everything under the rug and tried to move on, and my dad more than my mom. But I don't think they're completely healed individuals. So I wouldn't say that I don't think I look up to anybody's relationship in our family. I have I've created my own sort of ideals, and I just look up to that and I want to follow that. And I know what not to do, seeing my family.
The time that your mom was still around at your grandmom's, and there
I
was
don't
that
remember
that
tension.
there's that sort of tension. I feel that you sort of suppressed a lot of your personality in order to just, haha, okay, my
Yeah,
mom
yeah,
isn't
yeah, yeah.
keeping the peace, so let me. Yeah, so you
Yeah,
can
I
talk about that.
definitely was always trying to be the peacemaker in the house, and I couldn't really grow into myself. Or I was always, it was always so, the environment at home was always so volatile that when I used to come back home from school, first of all, that was not a safe space for me. I used to always just resent the idea of going back home every day. It's not that school was any better for me, but still, it was so much better than everything that would happen at home. And I feel like we used to have fights almost every day. And most of my energy, which a lot of other kids my age were putting into doing certain classes or learning certain skills or just things like that,
Hobbies and stuff.
hobbies and stuff, I all of my energy was going into maintaining the peace at home, or just because I'd get angry very easily, I'd lash out, so I'd be having fights on a daily basis. So I didn't really get to grow or learn anything. Everything that I have learned has been like I've learned that myself and only after a certain age. So I feel like the things that I had to go through really didn't give me any space to grow.
So in a sense, do you feel resentful about, how you had to combat so many additional things that, other kids from normal families haven't had to? And also, in a strange way, that has made you much more resilient, right? So, I mean, I always felt that I was resentful, and yet I'm far more resilient than anyone I know today.
Definitely. Even as a child, I remember one of my neighbors, she came over one day and her parents were constantly checking up on her, like, oh, have you eaten? Have you reached? Oh, when are you coming back? I'll send a driver for you. And I just remember seeing that and being like,
What's
oh,
wrong with you?
what is wrong with you? Like, it's
Yeah.
not that big of a deal. And
Yeah.
we was just 10. So it made sense for her
Yeah.
parents to be so
Yes.
concerned about it. But because I wasn't used to that, it felt like this is way too
What?
much. Like, why is
Yeah.
it happening? Why? Also, in certain ways, it made me feel less cared for and less
Yeah.
loved. So it did feel odd, definitely.
So I remember that when you were growing up, your grandmother used to take you all on holiday to, the family home and all of that. So was that something you looked forward to, or is that something at some level you felt you were being cast away and taken out of the scene so that, your parents could have their own life in whatever way?
No, I think the only reason we went along with our grandmother anywhere, we made most of our trips with her, and the only reason we went with her is because she was sh old. She needed like people to go with her, and I hated going anywhere with her, whether it was abroad or to some other city or to somebody's house, because every time we went out with her, my sister would just be in the background playing, doing whatever. I would be sitting with her and her friends or other relatives and just getting insulted left, right, and center. They would talk about me in front of me. They would
Talk about your parents.
talk about my parents in front of me. They would say very mean things, just downright extremely like insulting things. They talk about my weight, they talk about my mother and what a bad woman she is and all of that, and how we have nobody, and my grandmother has done the biggest thing in her life to take care of her grandchildren at this age, and always making us feel like we're a burden. Or we needed, like, or we asked for this. Like, we didn't ask for this. You shouldn't have planned for babies if you guys weren't ready for it. We didn't ask for it, and now that we're here, it is your duty and it is your responsibility to take care of us, and you have to look after us, and you can't
Wish us away.
wish us away, and you can't even make us feel like obligated or anything, because this is your duty, this is what you're supposed to do, and you took it up.
Absolutely.
And you can't make us feel, because that way your confidence is now already so low, and now you feel like you're a burden on everybody. And that is also, that's reflected a lot on my personal relationships with friends and romantic partnerships also, where I just feel like I don't want to talk too much, I don't want to say too much, I'll feel like a burden, or I don't want to burden you with my baggage, even though it's completely normal and it's completely okay. So until a date, I just feel like I always keep everything to myself, because I never had anybody growing up who I could vent to, and I always thought that there's really no point in doing it, because they'll give me some advice, it'll go back to being the same the next day. I'm the one who has to deal with everything. So I'd rather not make a huge mess out of it, otherwise I am the one who will have to deal with the consequences. I wouldn't tell my mother a lot of things, because she'd try to stand up for her kids, and then we'd get we get shit for it. And it made the next couple of days bad for us. So I just started keeping everything to myself. And I feel like because of that, I started like thinking about things in my own head, and I used to sort of try to figure things out in my head and talk it out with myself. And I think that is also a big reason that I'm studying psychology today. Like, this is what I want to do. I feel like I can really read people well, and I can dissect emotions and reasons and things like that, because I did that for myself my entire life.
Yeah. So does this make you want to have children? How does that?
Yeah, I definitely want to have children, because I want to give them everything that I did not have. That's the biggest reason I want, because I know so much now. I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. And I feel like the person that I am today is the person that I would have liked to have growing up. To have around growing up, to talk to, or anything. Like, I just love making people feel comfortable, because I know a lot of people are very shy, and they don't necessarily want to speak out. And I just want everybody to just feel included, because I never felt included. My teachers would also shame me a lot. They used to and nobody understood what was going on at home. So, and I couldn't really explain anything to them. They just thought that when I tell anybody that I come from a divorced family, they probably just think, okay, it's just like whatever, divorce, parents are separated, she's living with her father, and whatever comes along with it. But there's just a lot of other things that have gone on, and which really changed me, and which altered my brain chemistry.
Absolutely. But you think of marriage, definitely. Marriage and children, right? Not just children without the marriage.
No, marriage and children.
Yeah.
But
I guess it'll make you look very carefully for what you want in your partner.
Yes. All of this has really definitely helped me with that. And it's sort of also a way to show to my parents that this is how you raise kids. I mean, I love them, and I have forgiven everybody for everything, because they did the best they could with whatever knowledge they had, whatever they knew. And it took me a while to get over that. And I remember my relatives telling me to be the mature one. I was 6 years old. How do you expect a 6-year-old to act mature and to not cry or let their emotions out if they're going through something? I remember my relatives telling me to not speak up against my grandmother if she was wrong, or she said stuff that made me cry or made me, because she's older, you have to respect her. You can't make her feel sad because she's at this age, she's taking care of you. All of that I was told
Yeah.
as a child.
Yeah.
And that's not something that it should not be the child's responsibility to do all of that, to regulate anybody's emotions but their own. I mean, you can't even regulate your own emotions.
Right.
So I want to show everybody that this is how you raise your children. And of course, it's not an easy thing. Raising kids is not easy. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
But I would do my best, and I would just...
I think, Shreya, you've grown up into a lovely, wonderful young woman, and I'm very proud of you. And we've covered so much. We've talked about, your evolution, your childhood, into early womanhood and beyond, your role with your sister, how you have shaped your thoughts, your ideas, your coping strategies, and what a clear plan you have in terms of, the way forward in your romantic partnerships and as your journey, hopefully as a parent, which we shall get to see.
We never know.
So,
Let's
yeah.
see.
So I look forward to that, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you
Thank you for
freely and
having
frankly.
me.
Thanks.